The Valari had been watching Earth for 3 standard cycles before they decided to make their move. Their observation ships had circled the small blue planet, collecting data, studying the primitive beings that walked on its surface. Lead analyst Torvex had spent countless hours compiling his threat assessment, and he was confident in his conclusions. The dominant species uses primitive projectile weapons, he reported to High Commander Zeleth aboard the mothership. They have basic nuclear capability, though they appear afraid to use it against each other. Their rockets rely on chemical propulsion. Their aircraft are slow by our standards. Most importantly, they cluster on land masses that cover only 29% of the planetary surface. I estimate full pacification within 6 rotations. Commander Zeleth was a tall being with gray skin and 4 eyes that blinked in sequence when she was thinking. She reviewed the data on her display screen, scrolling through images of human cities, military bases, and transportation networks. Everything seemed straightforward. "And what of the remaining surface area?" she asked. Torvex made a dismissive gesture with his 3-fingered hand. "Water. A liquid compound of hydrogen and oxygen. It covers most of the planet but is essentially unoccupied. The humans build a few vessels to cross it, but they do not live there. It is irrelevant to our conquest protocols." Zeleth nodded slowly. The Valari homeworld was a desert planet with only small pools of water scattered across its surface. The concept of a world covered in liquid was strange to her, but if the humans did not use it, then it did not matter. "Proceed with the invasion plan," she ordered. The Valari descended upon Earth on what the humans called a Tuesday afternoon. Their massive vessel broke through the clouds over the Nevada desert, casting a shadow that stretched for miles. Smaller ships fanned out across the globe, positioning themselves over major cities on every continent. Within hours, they'd established communication with Earth's governments. The message was simple and direct: surrender unconditionally or face destruction. Join the Valari Dominion or be eliminated. There would be no negotiation. At the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., military leaders gathered in emergency sessions. Generals and admirals argued about response strategies while politicians demanded answers that no one could provide. The technological gap was obvious. Human weapons could not touch the alien ships. Human aircraft could not match their speed. Any direct confrontation would be a massacre. Lieutenant Commander Katie Morrison sat in a corner of one of the briefing rooms, watching the chaos unfold around her. She was 34 years old, with short brown hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her specialty was naval intelligence with a focus on marine biology, a combination that had always seemed strange to her colleagues. Today, for the first time, it felt important. She studied the alien transmissions, the demands, the tactical assessments that human intelligence agencies had managed to intercept. Something was bothering her, detail that everyone else seemed to be missing. Admiral Greg Patterson noticed her quiet concentration. He was her commanding officer, a weathered man of 60 who had spent his entire career in the Navy. His hair had gone gray years ago, and his face carried the lines of a man who had seen too much and slept too little. "Something on your mind, Morrison?" he asked, pulling up a chair beside her. Katie pointed at her screen. "Sir, I have been reviewing the alien communications. They have shared their tactical assessment of Earth with their fleet. I managed to get a copy from our signals intelligence team. They are not asking about the oceans." Katie pulled up a map of the world, the familiar image of blue water and brown land masses. Their entire assessment focuses on land-based military assets, army bases, air force installations, nuclear silos. They have counted every tank and every fighter jet, but they have not mentioned a single ship. Not one submarine, nothing. Patterson frowned. "Maybe they already have that information and are keeping it separate." "No, sir. I cross-referenced everything. They have been watching us for what appears to be years, and in all that time, they apparently decided that 71% of our planet was not worth studying." Katie traced her finger across the Pacific Ocean on the map. "They think we are a land species, sir. They think the water is just empty space." Patterson leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "We are a land species. With respect, sir, that is only part of the story. Yes, we live on land. We build our cities on land, but we have been sailing the oceans for thousands of years. We have submarines that can stay underwater for months without surfacing. We have aircraft carriers that are basically floating cities. We have weapon systems hidden beneath the waves that could destroy the entire world several times over. She paused, letting the implications sink in. And that is just our military capabilities. I am not even talking about what lives down there naturally. These aliens come from a desert world, sir. They have never seen an ocean before. They have no idea what exists beneath the surface of our waters. They think the ocean is just a big empty puddle. Patterson was silent for a long moment. Around them, the chaos of the emergency response continued. Phones rang constantly. Officers rushed back and forth with reports and updates. But in their small corner of the room, a different kind of understanding was forming. What are you suggesting? Patterson finally asked. Katie took a deep breath. I am suggesting that we may have an advantage they do not know about. They want us to surrender. Everyone is talking about how hopeless the situation is, how we cannot possibly fight back against their technology. But they are making their plans based on incomplete information. They think they understand Earth, but they only understand a small part of it. The 29%. Exactly, sir. The 29%. Katie minimized the map and pulled up a satellite image of a submarine cruising beneath the ocean surface, invisible from above. They do not know about our hidden assets. They do not understand our oceans. And I think that is going to matter a lot more than anyone realizes. Admiral Patterson stood up slowly. He looked at the image on the screen, then at Katie, then at the controlled chaos of the briefing room around them. Keep this to yourself for now, he said quietly. Do not share this analysis with anyone except me. If you are right, this information is more valuable than anything else we have. And if the aliens are monitoring our communications, we do not want them to know that we know. Katie nodded. Understood, sir. In the meantime, start compiling everything you can about our submarine fleet positions, our deep-sea research capabilities, and anything else related to our ocean presence. I want to know exactly what assets we have that these aliens have overlooked. Yes, sir. Patterson started to walk away, then stopped and looked back at her. Morrison, if this turns out to be as significant as you think it is, you might have just identified our only real hope of surviving this invasion. Katie watched him disappear into the crowd of officers. Through the windows, she could see the distant glow of the alien vessels hovering on the horizon, their lights pulsing with an otherworldly rhythm. The Valari thought they had conquered. Earth, they thought they understood this little blue planet and its primitive inhabitants. But they had made a mistake that might cost them everything. They had forgotten about the ocean. The Valari ground forces landed exactly 1 week after first contact. 10,000 soldiers in gleaming silver battle armor touched down across the planet. Each one carried plasma rifles capable of melting through steel. Each one wore personal shield generators that could stop any bullet. They moved with the confidence of an army that had never known defeat. Commander Zeleth directed the operation from orbit. Watching the holographic display as her forces spread across the continents like a wave, North America fell first. Ground teams secured Washington, D.C. before noon. The White House and Pentagon coming under Valari control with barely a shot fired. By evening, they held New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and a dozen other major cities. Europe followed the same pattern. London, Paris, Berlin, Rome, the capitals of the old world surrendered one by one. Asia proved slightly more difficult, but not by much. Beijing, Tokyo, Delhi, Sydney, every major population center, every seat of government, every military command structure passed into Valari hands. The human governments had ordered their militaries to stand down. Everyone could see the technological gap. Fighting would only mean death. And so humanity surrendered, officially and completely, within 48 hours of the ground. Invasion beginning. But something strange was happening beneath the surface of this surrender. Something the Valari did not notice. Admiral Greg Patterson had followed orders and stood down his visible forces. Aircraft carriers returned to port. Destroyers and cruisers anchored in harbors where Valari observers could count them. The surface fleet became quiet and still, offering no threat to the invaders, but the submarines kept moving. 31. Nuclear submarines from 6 different nations slipped beneath the waves and disappeared. They carried enough nuclear weapons to destroy the planet several times over. They could remain submerged for months without needing to surface, and the Valari had absolutely no idea they existed. Katie Morrison had been reassigned to a secret facility beneath the Chesapeake Bay. The bunker had been built during the Cold War, designed to survive nuclear attack. Now it served a different purpose. It was the last free command center of the human military. She stood before a group of naval commanders, connected via encrypted satellite links. Officers from America, Britain, France, Russia, China, and a dozen other nations listened as she delivered her briefing. The Valari come from a desert world called Valar Prime, she explained. Pointing to intelligence data displayed on the main screen, their planet has no oceans, no seas, no lakes of any significant size. Their entire civilization developed without large bodies of water. To them, liquid water in great quantities is as alien as their plasma weapons are to us. A Russian admiral spoke through the video link. You are saying they do not understand our oceans at all? That is exactly what I am saying, sir. Their threat assessment of Earth focused entirely on land-based assets. They counted every tank, every aircraft, every nuclear silo. But they did not count a single ship. They do not understand that our submarines even exist. And more importantly, they have no idea what lives in our oceans naturally. She changed the display to show images of deep-sea creatures. Giant squid with eyes the size of dinner plates. Sharks that had been hunting for 400 million years. Jellyfish with tentacles that stretched for 40 meters. Anglerfish with glowing lures that dangled in absolute darkness. Strange pale creatures that lived in crushing pressures around volcanic vents. The Valari have never encountered anything like this, Katie continued. Their biology, their technology, their entire way of thinking is based on a world without oceans. They cannot comprehend the pressures at the bottom of our seas. They cannot understand ecosystems that thrive in total darkness. They have no frame of reference for what we consider normal marine life. Admiral Patterson leaned forward. Morrison, are you suggesting we use this lack of understanding as a weapon? I am suggesting we already have weapons in place, sir. Weapons they do not know about and cannot defend against. Our submarine fleet remains fully operational. We have the capability to strike at any target on the planet from beneath the waves. The Valari cannot track us, cannot find us, cannot stop us. But they control the surface, a Chinese commander pointed out. They control the air. They control space itself. What good are submarines against orbital weapons platforms? Katie had thought about this question for days. The Valari need resources, sir? That is why they are here. They want to extract minerals, water, biological materials. Eventually, they will need to access our oceans. They will need to send vessels beneath the surface. And when they do, they will discover that they have made a terrible miscalculation. The meeting continued for several hours. Plans were made and discarded. Strategies were debated. But the core truth remained unchanged. Humanity had an advantage that the Valari did not know about. The question was how to use it. Meanwhile, on the surface, Commander Zeleth was establishing the new order. She took over the United Nations building in New York as her planetary headquarters. Human representatives were summoned to hear the terms of occupation. Katie was selected for the delegation. Her knowledge of alien communications and her ability to remain calm under pressure made her valuable. She traveled to New York with Senator Daniel Cruz of California and Dr. Lisa Huang, a marine biologist from Woods Hole. Oceanographic institution, the Great Assembly Hall of the United Nations, had been transformed. Valari technology hummed and glowed on every surface. Alien guards stood at attention along the walls. Commander Zeleth sat at the center of the raised platform where the Secretary General had once presided. Your species will be cataloged and assigned labor designations, Zeleth announced. Her voice echoed through the hall, translated by devices that the humans wore in their ears. Your planet's resources will be extracted for the benefit of the Dominion. Compliance will be rewarded with continued existence. Resistance will be eliminated without mercy. This is not a negotiation. This is an explanation of your new reality. Senator Cruz stepped forward. He was a tall man with silver hair, known for his calm demeanor even in crisis situations. We have questions about the terms of occupation, you may ask, Zeleth aloud. What about our naval forces? Our ships, our submarines, our coastal installations? You have made no mention of them in your occupation plans. Zeleth made a dismissive gesture with her four-fingered hand. Your primitive water vessels are of no concern to us. They cannot threaten our orbital platforms. They cannot affect our ground operations. They are irrelevant to the new order. Katie kept her face completely neutral, but inside she felt a spark of hope. The aliens truly did not understand. They looked at the human fleet and saw floating metal boxes that posed no threat. They did not see the nuclear weapons hidden beneath the waves. They did not see the generations of naval tradition and expertise. They did not see the ocean itself, vast and deep and full of secrets. We understand, Senator Cruz said smoothly. We simply wanted clarification. That night, Katie met with Lisa Huang in a secured room in what had been the American embassy. They swept the room for listening devices before speaking. They have no idea, Lisa said, shaking her head in disbelief. I listened to that commander talk about Earth's resources, and she never mentioned the oceans once. Do they not realize that the oceans contain more life than all the land combined? Do they not understand that we get most of our oxygen from marine plants? They are completely blind to 71% of this planet. Katie nodded grimly. And we need to keep it that way. The longer they remain ignorant, the more time we have to prepare. Prepare for what? For the moment when they finally discover what they have missed? For the moment when they realize that conquering Earth is not as simple as they thought? Katie looked out the window at the alien lights hovering over the city. The Velari think they have won. But this war is just beginning. 3 months had passed since the Velari conquest of Earth's surface. The occupation had settled into a strange routine. Humans went to work in factories that now served alien purposes. Cities continued to function under gray-skinned overseers. Life went on, changed, but not destroyed. Commander Zeleth sat in her headquarters reviewing resource extraction reports. The land-based operations were proceeding well. Mines were producing valuable minerals. Forests were being harvested for biological compounds. But something was bothering her, a gap in the numbers that she could not explain. Torvex, she called to her chief analyst. Our resource projections are falling short. We expected this planet to yield more valuable materials than we are finding on the land masses. Torvex consulted his data tablet. The land-based resources are being extracted at optimal rates, Commander. Perhaps the initial surveys overestimated the planet's total value. No. Zeleth stood and walked to the window, looking out at the lights of New York City. I have been studying human records. They speak constantly of resources from their oceans, minerals from the seafloor, biological materials from marine creatures, energy from underwater volcanic activity. We have been ignoring 71% of this planet's potential. Torvex shifted uncomfortably. Commander, our technology is not designed for underwater operations. The Velari have never needed to develop such capabilities. Then we will adapt. Prepare a survey team. I want a vessel sent beneath the surface to assess what resources may be available. We will start with a region the humans call the Pacific Ocean. The extraction vessel was a bulbous craft originally designed for atmospheric operations on gas giant moons. Velari engineers modified it as best they could for underwater use, reinforcing the hull and adding pressure compensation systems. They estimated it could descend to approximately 3 kilometers before the structural integrity would be compromised. 12 Velari technicians were assigned to the mission. Commander Zeleth also ordered 2 human observers to accompany them, reasoning that local knowledge might prove useful. Dr. Lisa Huang was selected for her expertise in marine biology. A young oceanographer named Sam Porter was chosen as her assistant. Sam was 28 years old. With curly brown hair and an easy smile that hid a sharp mind, he had spent his career studying the deep ocean, diving in research submersibles to depths that would crush ordinary vessels. He knew what waited in the darkness below. He was curious to see how the aliens would react. The vessel launched from a platform near the coast of Japan, sliding beneath the waves with a strange humming sound. Inside, the Valari technicians monitored their instruments while the pilot, a being named Nexus, guided them deeper into the blue void. How deep can this vessel safely descend? Sam asked casually. Nexus checked his readouts. Our pressure tolerance is rated for approximately 3 of your kilometers. We will be extracting mineral samples from the ocean floor in this region, which according to our scans should be within that depth. Sam and Lisa exchanged a quick glance. The average depth of the ocean was nearly 4 kilometers. The deepest point was almost 11. The Valari had no idea how far down the ocean actually went. Perhaps we should start with a shallower region, Lisa suggested carefully. Just to calibrate your equipment. Unnecessary, Nexus replied confidently. Our scans have already identified mineral deposits at the target depth. We will proceed directly to the extraction point. The vessel D ascended through layers of blue that grew darker and darker. Sunlight faded as they passed through the twilight zone, that eerie region where the last traces of surface light disappeared into blackness. The Valari technicians began activating their external lights, powerful beams that cut through the water and illuminated the endless empty space around them. At 1,000 meters, the temperature dropped noticeably. At 1,500 meters, strange particles began drifting past the viewports like underwater snow, the remains of dead creatures falling slowly toward the bottom. At 2,000 meters, something appeared in the lights. It was a giant squid, perhaps 15 meters long from the tip of its body to the ends of its trailing tentacles. Its skin was pale and ghostly in the artificial light, and its eye, an enormous disc the size of a dinner plate, turned to look directly at the Valari vessel. Nexus screamed. The sound that came from his throat was unlike anything Sam had ever heard from any species. It was a high-pitched wail of pure terror that echoed through the entire vessel. Within seconds, the other technicians were screaming too. 2 of them collapsed unconscious to the floor. 3 others began clawing at the airlock, desperate to escape even though opening it would mean instant death. What is that creature? Nexus demanded, his voice breaking with fear. What is that thing? That is a giant squid, Lisa said calmly. She might have been discussing the weather. They are actually quite docile. They eat fish and smaller squid. They are curious by nature, which is probably why it came to look at us. You are much more interesting to it than it is dangerous to you. Docile? Nexus stared at her as if she had lost her mind. It is a monster. How can such a thing exist? How can any living creature grow so large? The deep ocean has different rules, Sam explained. The cold temperatures and high pressure allow organisms to grow much larger than they would on the surface. This squid is actually a medium-sized example. The biggest ones can reach over 20 meters. Bigger? One of the technicians made a choking sound. And that is just the squid. Want to go deeper? The really interesting things live near the bottom. He did not go deeper. Nexus aborted the mission immediately. The vessel rose toward the surface as fast as its engines would allow, leaving the curious squid alone in the darkness. The Valari technicians huddled together, their gray skin pale with shock. Several of them had to be sedated to prevent panic attacks. When the vessel surfaced and docked at the platform, Nexus filed a report that would change everything. Commander Zeleth read the document with growing disbelief. She read it again, then a third time. Then, she summoned Lisa Huang and Sam Porter to her headquarters in New York. Your ocean, she said slowly, contains creatures like this. Lisa nodded. The giant squid is just one of millions of species that live beneath the surface. There are also colossal squid, which are even larger. There are great white sharks, which have been hunting in Earth's oceans for over 400 million years. There are sperm whales that dive to extreme depths to feed on the squid. There are jellyfish whose tentacles stretch for 40 meters and carry enough venom to kill hundreds of humans. Zeleth's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. And you live with these creatures? You share your planet with such monsters. We have learned to coexist with them, Sam said. We have been sailing the oceans for thousands of years. We have built vessels that can descend to the deepest points on Earth. We have studied these creatures, cataloged them, and in many cases, learned to appreciate them. To us, they are not monsters. They are simply our neighbors. But the depths, Nexus interrupted. He had been standing quietly in the corner, still visibly shaken. The pressures at the bottom of your ocean would crush our best vessels. How do these creatures survive? Evolution, Lisa explained. Life in Earth's oceans has had billions of years to adapt to the conditions down there. The creatures of the deep have bodies designed for extreme pressure. Some of them would actually die if you brought them to the surface because their cells are built to function under crushing weight. Zelith was quiet for a long moment. She looked at the images attached to Nexus's report. The ghostly squid, with its enormous eye. The strange fish with glowing lures dangling from their heads. The pale crabs clustered around volcanic vents that spewed superheated water. It was like looking at creatures from another dimension. We will need to revise our resource extraction plans, she finally said. The ocean presents challenges we did not anticipate. Sam allowed himself a small smile. Yes, Commander. It certainly does. That night, back in the secret bunker beneath the Chesapeake Bay, Katie Morrison listened to Lisa and Sam describe their experience. The fear in the Volari technicians' eyes, the panic that had spread through the vessel at the sight of a single squid, the hasty retreat to the surface. They're terrified of the water, Lisa concluded. They have no framework for understanding it. Every creature they encountered was more alien to them than their plasma rifles are to us. The ocean is not just an obstacle to them. It is a nightmare. Katie nodded slowly. Then we have more of an advantage than we even realized. The ocean is not just hiding our submarines and our weapons. It is a barrier they cannot cross, a world they cannot enter. And as long as they fear it, they will never truly control this planet. The ocean had begun to fight back. Commander Zelith had not slept properly in 3 weeks. Every time she closed her 4 eyes, she saw the images from Nexus's report. Giant squid drifting through darkness. Sharks with rows of teeth designed for tearing flesh. Jellyfish trailing venomous tentacles through black water. And worse things. Things that lived in the deepest places where no light had ever reached. She had ordered a complete review of all. Available information about Earth's oceans. Human databases were accessed. Scientific papers were translated. Documentary videos were studied frame by frame. What emerged was a catalog of nightmares that kept her awake at night. The oceans contained over 2 million known species. Scientists estimated that 10 million more remained undiscovered in the depths. The total biomass in the water exceeded everything living on land combined. Food chains of impossible complexity stretched from the sunlit surface to the crushing darkness of the abyss. And then there were the specific creatures. The blue whale. The largest animal ever to exist on any known planet, growing to over 30 meters in length. The great white shark, a perfect killing machine, virtually unchanged for millions of years. The box jellyfish, whose sting could kill a human in minutes. The cone snail, with venom powerful enough to paralyze any prey. The giant Pacific octopus, intelligent enough to open jars and solve puzzles, but the deep sea was worse. ANGL fish, with bioluminescent lures dangling in absolute darkness, waiting for prey to swim close. Goblin sharks with jaws that extended from their faces like weapons. Vampire squid that survived in oxygen-poor waters where nothing else could live. Giant isopods the size of footballs. Armored scavengers that cleaned the bones of anything that died above, and at the very bottom. In the trenches and volcanic vents, life existed in conditions that should have been impossible. Tube worms clustered around superheated water at temperatures that would cook any surface creature. Bacteria thrived in pressures that would crush the strongest Volari vessels. Pale crabs and eyeless fish moved through eternal darkness, perfectly adapted to an environment that made the surface world seem gentle by comparison. Zelith summoned Torvex to her office. The chief analyst arrived looking nervous, knowing that his original assessment of Earth had proven catastrophically wrong. "You told me this planet was safe," Zelith said quietly. Her voice was calm, which made it more frightening. "The land masses appeared manageable, Commander. The humans showed no weapons that could threaten our orbital platforms. Their technology was centuries behind ours, the landmasses. Zeleth stood and walked slowly toward him. You assessed 29% of this world and declared it pacified. 29%, Torvex. You ignored the rest because it was covered in water. The humans live on land. Their cities are on land. Their visible military installations are on land. I evaluated the threats that were apparent. Apparent. Zeleth's voice rose for the first time. And what about the threats that were not apparent? What about the vessels they have hiding beneath the water? Ships that can remain submerged for months without surfacing. Weapons that can strike from depths we cannot reach.
Ow.
Torvex's gray skin went pale. Vessels. What vessels? Zeleth activated a display screen. Images appeared showing sleek black shapes moving through dark water. The humans call them submarines. They have been building them for over a century. They use them to hide their most powerful weapons. Nuclear missiles, Torvex, enough destructive power to wipe out our entire fleet, and they have been hiding in the ocean since before we arrived. Why did our scans not detect them? Because water blocks our sensors. Because the ocean is vast beyond comprehension. Because these vessels are designed specifically to avoid detection. The humans have been playing a game of hiding beneath the waves for generations. They are very good at it. Zeleth pulled up more images. We cannot find them. We cannot track them. We cannot reach them. And if we push too hard, if we threaten human extinction, they will launch those weapons and destroy us all. The tactical implications were devastating. The Volari had established complete control of the air and space above Earth. They held every major city on every continent. But beneath the surface of the planet's oceans, a human fleet remained free and armed with weapons of mass destruction. It was a stalemate that Zeleth had never anticipated. Over the following weeks, the Volari attempted several more underwater operations. Each one ended in failure. A mining vessel sent to extract minerals from the seafloor was attacked by a school of large fish that the humans called tuna. The creatures were not hostile, merely curious, but their size and speed terrified the Volari crew into abandoning the mission. A reconnaissance probe descended into the deep Atlantic and was crushed by pressure at 4,000 meters. Far short of the bottom, a survey team exploring a coastal region encountered a pod of orcas, black and white predators that hunted in coordinated packs. The team retreated so quickly that they damaged their vessel in the process. And then there was the incident. In the Mariana Trench, Volari engineers had developed a new deep-sea vessel. Reinforced with the strongest materials their technology could produce, they boasted that it could descend to 7,000 meters, deep enough to reach most of the ocean floor. A crew of 17 technicians was assembled for the maiden voyage. The vessel made it to 6,000 meters before things went wrong. The first problem was the creatures. At that depth, life took strange forms. Pale fish with no eyes drifted past the viewports. Enormous sea cucumbers crawled across the sediment. And then something larger appeared in the distance. Something the sensors could not properly identify. Something that moved with terrible purpose through the darkness. The crew never got a clear view of it. They only saw a shape, massive and pale, that seemed to take up half the visible space before them. It passed like a ghost and disappeared, leaving the technicians shaking with terror. Then the vessel began to groan. The pressure at that depth was crushing. Every square centimeter of the hull bore the weight of 600 atmospheres. The reinforced materials held, but just barely. Warning lights flashed. Structural integrity alarms screamed, and the pilot, panicking, tried to ascend too quickly. The rapid pressure change caused catastrophic failure. The vessel imploded before it could reach safe depth. All 17 technicians were killed instantly. Commander Zeleth received the news in silence. 17 dead because they had tried to explore what the humans considered their home environment. 17 casualties to the ocean, thing that was not even supposed to be their enemy. She summoned Katie Morrison to her headquarters. Katie arrived in her naval uniform, her expression neutral. She had been playing a careful game for months. cooperating with the occupation while secretly feeding information to the resistance. She was never certain whether the Valari suspected her, but so far they had not acted against her. "Your species has been deceptive," Zeleth accused. Katie kept her voice calm. "With respect, Commander, you never asked? Asked about what? The monsters in your waters? The hidden war machines? All of it." Katie allowed herself a small smile. "You looked at our planet and saw a world with some water on it. We look at our planet and see an ocean with some land in it. You thought you conquered Earth. You conquered the 29% we could spare." Zeleth stared at her for a long moment. "You knew. From the beginning you knew we did not understand. Of course we knew. It was obvious from your first transmissions. You had watched us for years, but never studied our seas. You knew everything about our armies and nothing about our navies. You planned an invasion of a water world without understanding water." Katie gestured toward the window, toward the distant gray horizon where the Atlantic Ocean stretched to infinity. "You thought the ocean was empty space? You thought it was irrelevant? But the ocean is where we come from. It is in our blood, in our history, in every part of who we are. You cannot conquer humans without conquering the sea. And Commander, you cannot conquer the sea." Zeleth was silent for a very long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet with something that might have been respect. "Then we are at an impasse." "Yes," Katie agreed. "I believe we are." 1 year had passed since the Valari first descended upon Earth. The occupation had changed both species. In ways that neither had anticipated, the aliens still controlled the cities. Their soldiers still patrolled the streets. Their vessels still dominated the skies. But their confidence had eroded like sand beneath waves. Every day brought new reports of failed operations, of crews traumatized by encounters with marine life, of technology that simply could not cope with the pressures of the deep, and the humans had grown bolder. Submarines surfaced briefly to transmit messages that the Valari could detect but not prevent. Fishing vessels operated freely in international waters, reminding everyone that the ocean remained beyond alien control. Coastal communities traded stories of the invaders who feared to swim, who panicked at the sight of dolphins, who fled from harmless schools of fish. Commander Zeleth had spent months studying humanity with new eyes. She read their literature, watched their films, listened to their music. So much of it was connected to the sea. Songs about sailors and storms, stories about whales and voyages, art that depicted waves and depths and the creatures that lived within them. The ocean was woven into human culture in ways that a desert species could never truly understand. Finally, she made a decision that would have been unthinkable. 1 year ago, she requested a formal meeting with Earth's remaining leadership. Not a surrender negotiation. Not a demand for compliance. A diplomatic discussion between equals. The meeting took place on neutral ground. A human research vessel in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, far from any land, surrounded by nothing but water and sky. It was a location that made every Valari present deeply uncomfortable, which was precisely why the humans had suggested it. Katie Morrison attended as the primary military advisor. She stood on the deck of the ship, watching the alien shuttle descend from the clouds. The wind carried the smell of salt and the cries of distant seabirds. Waves rolled beneath the vessel in endless rhythms that humans had known for thousands of generations. Admiral Patterson was there too. Representing what remained of Earth's unified naval command, Dr. Lisa Huang stood nearby, her expertise more valuable than ever. Sam Porter completed their delegation. It's the young oceanographer who had witnessed the Valari's terror firsthand. Commander Zeleth emerged from the shuttle with a small escort. She looked tired in a way that went beyond species, the exhaustion of someone who had fought a battle they could not win. Her 4 eyes scanned the ocean around them with visible unease. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she said as she stepped onto the deck. "Thank you for requesting it," Admiral Patterson replied. "Shall we go inside? I imagine you would be more comfortable away from the water." They gathered in the ship's main conference room. Through the windows, the Atlantic stretched to every horizon, gray and green and infinite. The vessel rocked gently with the swells, a motion that the humans barely noticed, but that made the Valari grip their seats. We underestimated your world, Zeleth began. Her voice was formal, but honest. This is acknowledged. Our initial assessment was catastrophically wrong. We believed we understood Earth. We did not. That is putting it mildly, Lisa said. You tried to set up a mining operation in the Mariana Trench last month. We tried to warn you. 17 technicians lost. Zeleth's voice was heavy with the memory. The pressure alone would have been fatal. And then there were the creatures. Things in the darkness that our sensors could barely detect. Things that our people had never imagined in their worst nightmares. Deep-sea gigantism, Lisa explained gently. The cold temperatures and high pressure allow organisms to grow to enormous sizes. What your people encountered down there were probably giant isopods. Think of them as very large crabs or bugs. They are actually quite harmless. They feed on dead matter that falls from above. They were the size of personal transport vehicles. Yes, that is what I said. Large bugs. Sam suppressed a smile. The Valari had gone to war against a planet where the bugs were bigger than their cars. In hindsight, it was almost funny. Admiral Patterson leaned forward, steering the conversation toward practical matters. Commander, I think we can all agree that this occupation is not working as planned. Your forces control the cities, but you cannot control the seas. Our submarine fleet remains fully operational. Our coastal defenses are intact. Every time your people attempt to access the ocean, something goes wrong. Your oceans are hostile to all intelligent life, Zeleth said bitterly. No. Katie spoke firmly, but without anger. The oceans are hostile to unprepared life. We have been learning to survive in those waters for thousands of years. We have built technology to explore them. We have developed the skills to navigate them. We have made friends with creatures that would terrify your soldiers. The ocean is not our enemy, Commander. It is our home. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the endless water. You see that? That is what we see when we look at our planet. Not a world with some water on it. A water world with some land. We did not evolve on the plains or in the forests. We came from the sea, Commander. Every human being carries salt water in their veins because that is where life on Earth began. The ocean is our origin, our heritage, and our refuge. She turned back to face Zeleth directly. You came here thinking you understood us because you studied our cities and our armies, but you missed the most important thing about humanity. We are an ocean species. We were shaped by the tides. We learned to build boats before we learned to build houses. We explored the seas before we explored the land, and we will never, ever give up our connection to the water. The room was silent for a long moment. The ship rocked gently. Somewhere outside, a seabird called, "What do you propose?" Zeleth finally asked. The negotiation lasted 3 days. Tempers flared at times. Old grievances were aired. But slowly, painfully, an agreement took shape. The Valari would withdraw from Earth's surface. Their ground forces would return to orbit. Their occupation of human cities would end. In exchange, humanity would agree to limited trade agreements, sharing certain resources and technologies under carefully controlled conditions. A non-aggression pact would be signed. Preventing hostilities on either side, the Valari would be permitted to maintain an observation post on the moon. But they would not attempt to colonize Earth or exploit its oceans. The seas would remain under human control, forever off-limits to alien extraction. This is not the outcome we envisioned when we came to this world. Zeleth admitted as the final documents were prepared for transmission to the Valari High Command. Katie agreed. But it is a better outcome than continued conflict. Your people cannot survive in our oceans. Our people cannot challenge your orbital weapons. Neither side can truly defeat the other. Peace is the only logical option. Zeleth made a sound that might have been laughter. Your oceans defeated us. Your fish and your squid and your crushing depths. We came to conquer a primitive world and discovered that we had fundamentally misunderstood what we were facing. Do not feel too badly about it, Sam offered. We have been studying our own oceans for centuries and we still do not fully understand them. There are places down there that no human has ever seen. Creatures that we have only glimpsed on cameras, mysteries that might take us another 1,000 years to solve. You are not the first to underestimate the deep, and you will not be the last. As the Volari shuttle lifted off from the research vessel's deck, Katie stood at the railing watching it rise into the clouds. The Atlantic spread out around her in every direction, patient and vast and full of secrets that humanity was still learning. Admiral Patterson joined her at the railing. "Think they will come back?" "Maybe," Katie said. "But if they do, they will know better than to underestimate us, because of our submarines." Katie smiled and looked out at the dark water. Somewhere beneath the waves, life went on in forms that the Volari could not imagine. Whales sang their ancient songs. Sharks patrolled their territories. In the deepest trenches, strange creatures lived in pressures that would crush any vessel yet built by any species. "Because of everything down there," she said. "Every strange creature, every unexplored trench, every ecosystem that exists in conditions they cannot survive." They thought Earth was safe because they only looked at the surface. They never realized that the real Earth, the dangerous Earth, the unconquerable Earth, was waiting underneath the whole time. Sam joined them at the railing. The three of them stood together watching the sun begin to set over the Atlantic. The water turned gold and orange and red, colors reflected in clouds and waves alike. "What do we do now?" Sam asked. "We go home," Lisa said, emerging from the conference room. "We rebuild. We remember what happened here, and we make sure our children remember too. We came from the ocean, and the ocean saved us. That is a story worth telling." Katie nodded slowly. The Volari flagship was becoming visible in the evening sky, a distant light moving toward the stars. Below it, the ocean continued its eternal rhythms, waves rising and falling as they had for billions of years before humans existed, and would continue for billions of years after. Humanity was not just a land species that happened to have some water nearby. Humanity was the species that had looked into the abyss and learned to call it home. They had built ships to sail above the waves and submarines to travel beneath them. They had studied the monsters of the deep and learned to live alongside them. They had embraced the chaos and the darkness and the crushing pressure and made it part of their identity. The Volari had conquered nations and governments and cities, but they had never conquered the sea. And because of that, they had never truly conquered Earth. The ocean stretched out before them. It's endless and patient and full of mysteries yet to be discovered. Whatever came next, whatever challenges the future might bring, humanity would face them with the knowledge that their planet was more than the aliens had ever understood. They were children of the deep, and the deep would always protect its own,